Batu, Barada, Nikto.
You must remember those words.
Gordon's alive.
You know what the Turing test is?
I know Kung Fu.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
My God, it's full of stars.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stories Out of Time and Space. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and as always, I'm joined by my 90s cartoon aficionado, Julian Darius. Julian, how are you doing? You okay?
I was doing better before I had to watch Robocop Alpha Commando.
Yeah.
This was tough going.
Yeah. Well, all right, let's just put this in front. So, we talked about the 80s. So, 10 years later, 1998, there are 12 episodes of the last one. There was a series commission for this one. It was 41 episodes of this. And it opens with a 3-part story called, I think it's Justice Reborn. And
Even the title.
yeah, Justice Reborn, part 1 and 2, 1, 2, and 3. That's what I watched. I couldn't really get further than that.
I couldn't even make it through all 3 of those.
Okay.
I was so pissed off.
This show starts with this show has one good idea, and I shall leave it at that. And then has some like other things going on. All right, let's put it in context. Firstly, I want to highlight one thing that drove me insanely mad watching this cartoon. Right, and it's a little bugbear, barely that. In the opening credits, to possibly the worst song, it's just
Yes.
Robocop.
It has
Robocop.
one word in the entire song.
Yeah, over and over. It's like some weird chant. It's awful.
You
However,
get the feeling that like there were other versions of this song that they came up with lines of dialogue, and they just thought like, yeah, do
too
those
hard.
lines of dialogue really work? Like, what if we just get rid of them? Right? The essential thing is Robocop, right? Let's just chant that.
yeah. Or they turned up on the day and were like, we're not singing that. We're just going to sing this. However, in the start of that, it says, in old Detroit, 2030 AD. And then you start the cartoon and it says, Washington, D.C., 2020 AD. And I was like, oh, we're getting a flashback before we get to the other bits. Nope. They just didn't do any continuity checking on this because throughout the 3 episodes I watched, it says in the credits, Old Detroit 2030 AD, and then the start of every episode just says 2020 AD. Like, that's really bad. Bad. Also,
in fairness,
can I just say,
later episodes did change it to 2030.
Right.
So apparently, yeah. Not that I watched them.
No.
I refuse to watch them.
we should also note, though, in this series, Robocop has been on ice for about 10 years. That's what it suggests. The film takes place in 2032. So this doesn't even meet with the film continuity. So it's all over the place. Like, this cartoon is not starting well. And it gets worse. But basically,
while we're on just basic things, it uses like the most generic kind of like Robocop transition with like the Robocop Alpha Commando logo on like a spirals in, like
it's not. This is if it was good enough for Transformers in '84.
Yeah, except that
with
looked
the
good. That
logo.
was hand drawn. This is like early CG kind of graphic, and you're just like, what am I watching?
Yeah, it looks awful. I'm not gonna lie. I agree. It's so cheap and horrible.
Cheap and horrible. That's going on the DVD box set.
I do want to highlight, like, 'cause I look at these in IMDb and I look at the pictures because it's sort of refreshes my mind and makes me think of things. When I was looking at when I had the pictures up here on the site, just outside for the 88 version, there's like
Mhm.
10, maybe 11 pictures. All right, there's two for this. Like this is although this has more episodes, this is clearly reviled. It's got a 5.1 rating, but it's such a bad show. Um, but
And
let's see.
correctly reviled.
Oh yeah. Well, let me give you a quick on the premise. So basically, this steals from everything that came before it. In 2020, possibly 2030, at some point in the timeline, Robocop has been retired and put into cryogenic freezing. And at the same time, there's an organization called the Alpha Commandos, and the Alpha Commandos are basically a bit like a, a secret organization, secret service organization. I'm not sure if they're sort of sanctioned by the government or not. I didn't get that far into it. And one of them, um, who's I can't remember the girl's name.
Mhm.
Agent something or other.
Nancy
Um,
Minor.
Minor, thank you. Agent Minor is goes undercover as part of the Detroit Police Department to stop an assassination of a foreign dignitary from a Middle Eastern country. That I want to get into how racist this cartoon gets. You didn't see it; like it gets worse by the third episode. Like to the extent of like I was kind of gobsmacked by one of the things that's said in this cartoon. Anyway, she goes undercover, and somehow she ends up being partnered with a cryogenically frozen Robocop and a doctor. Um, it doesn't matter. The character's just more meaningless. Has been sort of
Cornelius Newmeyer.
Newmeyer.
Dr.
Thank you,
Newmeyer.
Doctor Newmeyer has had him on cryogen. Has had him sort of frozen and resuscitates him, but he has some sort of issues, and he sort of they have to he sort of sparks out. His power source goes. But the first thing Robocop says when he is sort of whatever re-brought back to life, steps out and says, "Hello, Doctor Newmeyer. Who's the babe?"
Yes. Yeah. That's what I want from RoboCop. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, and let's be clear, everything RoboCop says is a quip.
Yep.
If you thought like the quippiness of RoboCop 3 was bad, just wait until you see this. And that who's the babe thing? Everything about the show screams 90s to me in the
Oh
worst way.
yes. Oh yes. Yes.
It is like the quintessential 90s cartoon show. The animation style is that 90s style that I fucking hate.
Yeah.
That's just like Batman Adventures, Batman did it, in the animated TV show, and sort of influenced by a sort of more simplistic kind of anime,
Mm-hmm.
sort of style, a little more stylized Bruce
Big
Timm.
chested, slim waisted, kind of. Yeah.
Yes, and so everything then became that style for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And I could not stand any of it at the time. I can't stand it now. Watching RoboCop in that style just makes me want to vomit,
Yeah.
But everything is extreme, babe. That sounds like such a 90s thing to me.
But like you
Who's
say,
the babe? That's what
it
RoboCop, right?
yeah.
Because our Murphy was a surfer dude.
Yeah. Well, throughout this, as you said, like that's not the worst of it. Like it continues. Like he makes jokes. He is also basically like Iron Man. He has like a glue gun, and he has but then he also has rocket in his shoulders, and like a stun gun in his hand. It's all
His costume does exactly what they needed to do at any
yes.
moment for the plot.
Oh, it's the
And it's
Batman
got a
utility
million
belt. Yeah.
gadgets. He's like Inspector Gadget,
Yeah.
basically,
Yes.
Who wants RoboCop to be Inspector Gadget? Like, what is the thinking here?
I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, but the thing we should highlight as well, sorry, I didn't mention, is so we've talked about the good guys, the bad guys in this. Like there is, I don't think OCP isn't in it as far as I'm aware, really. But there is a shady mayor in
Mhm.
Detroit, And that sort of there's other bits and pieces, but there's also Dark, um, DARC.
The Directorate for Anarchy, Revenge, and Chaos. Like, did you think Hydra was a little too off message? Uh
I love how they must have workshop. I love acronym villain titles. They are one of the best things to appear out of. I mean, this is clearly like this is Ian Fleming started this with like Smash
yeah.
and Spectre and all that kind of crap. Sort of started all that, but um, it's so ridiculous. And
Yeah,
it
and
then
they're a
introduced
terrorist organization.
yes,
Uh
yeah. And then by the second episode, it introduces an agent of Dark who is a woman that has a sort of spindly exosuit, and she's part person, part machine, and they're trying to destroy this or assassinate, should say, sorry, this dignitary from this Middle East, this newly established Middle Eastern country, and they're trying to sort of stop this assassination. It's called Norgmanistan, is what it's called, right? And at the in the last episode, so they're trying. There's a future village, I think it's called. They're going to have this big, uh, welcoming ceremony for these people from Nugmanistan. This peaceful, they call it a peaceful island in the Middle East at one point. I mean, fair enough. They go through all these rules. They have a rule book of things you
yeah.
shouldn't do because it'll offend them, and it goes through like all these ridiculous things. At one point, they're like, "You don't scratch your left ear" because they take it as an offense against their sister. And at the end of it, this person from Turkmenistan basically stands up and says, "We were part of Kazakhstan, Afghanistan, and something else," and says, "But now we are Turkmenistan." I'm going like, I'm not even sure if geographically that works.
No.
Like,
Yeah.
um, it's so it's so insanely get sort of like you're thinking like this is the 90s. They should really be a little bit more aware, but fine. Um,
Well, the rule book thing is sort of like a parody of political correctness, right? From
yes,
the early 90s. But such a sort of tone deaf, not intelligent parody, right? Like, it's so random. Like it's an insult against their sister. Like, like I get what they're going for, but it's just painful.
it's so weird. This show is repeatedly kind of like just
But not weird
um
good. Let's
no,
be
no,
crystal
no,
clear.
no, no, not weird good. I mean, at one point, like this whole thing, like Robocop and Miner go on the run. They're being hunted down because they're sort of enemies of the Detroit Police Department. So they're hiding out in this apartment. Yet they'll then go to like a mini mart to pick up baby food because obviously that's what Robocop eats. And like, there's just it's like kind of but like you said, he's quipping and making jokes all the time. Um,
He's actually chipper. This is like a
yes.
chipper RoboCop. Like he's like the fun action hero with a million gadgets.
Yes.
All sense of tragedy is gone, right? Like he's not a morbid, traumatized person anymore. He's just a chipper, gadget-ridden macho guy.
Well, we should also, I should mention, I don't remember, I only watched the first three episodes. He doesn't remove his helmet in any of
No,
those.
he does it anytime in the series.
He doesn't.
No, there's never a shot of him without his helmet in 40 episodes.
So the thing is, like, they call him Murphy and he says about being a man and stuff, but like they've removed that element that that is the point. I mean, it is the 88 show had that in it early on, was like, oh no, we've got to show his face and all this other stuff. Um,
Yeah, but removing the helmet, right? That visual is of skin with metal
yes.
grafted into it. It's of horror, right?
Yes.
It's of a traumatized body,
Yeah.
right? This show can't do that because it just wants him to be like if you thought the live action show was too much of a superhero show or the animated show was
Yeah.
too superhero
Oh,
or
this
RoboCop
is
3, this is just fuck it. We're full on superhero. He's basically like a macho white version of Cyborg.
yes, 100%. That's exactly what it is. Like gadgets can do everything. He uses exactly like interface. Like he gets taken over. Like he gets reprogrammed in I think in episode 2 and has to fight his programming to kill the person from Nogmanistan. Do you know how he does it? You don't because you haven't watched it. You're wise not to watch it. He has a flashback of his son. Um,
Oh,
and his son saying, "Dad, how do you know what's right and what's wrong?" And it comes back to
God.
him saying, "I know what's right." And he fights his programming and pulls his arm off so that he can't shoot the gun. But we also know he has rocket launchers in his shoulders. He has a stun gun in his other arm. All this other stuff. It's insanely irritating by this point. I was getting really kind of like, I'm going to watch this because I want to see all three of these episodes. But this is bad. Like this is really bad.
Train wreck.
Oh yes. I mean, this is the kind of
Well,
thing. This is react. I can imagine RoboCop fans reacting to this in a similar way that I reacted to Section 31, where you're just like, oh no, this is just offensive. Like this is taking everything I thought was I liked and has just sort of thrown that away, and I've just left with whatever they think is trendy of the time. That's
yep,
exactly what this is.
yeah. Well, later episodes have RoboCop having roller skates that pop out of his feet and a parachute
Amazing.
because why not?
Yeah.
Nothing says a satire of fascism like a chipper guy in, you know, poorly animated armor, poorly designed. I mean, yeah, there's really nothing good about this.
No. And it's forgotten. I mean, that's what the good thing is it's been forgotten. Like this has been sort of cast into history as like, yeah, nobody remembers this. Um, it's not good. Like, you know, um, the 90s were kind of strong for cartoons. I think, like, we said about 80s cartoons being that kind of, there was a commercialism to them. Marvel was really sort of all over them, trying to give them depth and trying to do different pieces. And we said about the inappropriateness of certain characters being turned into sort of animated cartoons for kids. But the 90s were like weird. The 90s was when you got like Ren and Stimpy, Cow and Chicken, and,
Hmm.
and like Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network were doing like whatever the hell they wanted. Hey Arnold and sort of like all these kind of different animation styles and stuff. I love like 90s cartoons. There's some really cool animation styles in there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you also got garbage.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that really turned me off to animation in the 90s, and I watched some of that same stuff,
Mm,
but one of the problems is that it all became kind of quirky.
yeah,
Not necessarily,
too
not,
quirky.
yes, and not necessarily just for kids. I mean, it definitely was like a kid quirky, right? It wasn't, um, RoboCop 1, RoboCop 2, weird quirky, right? It was a kind of like kid quirky that had enough adult weirdness in it that adults could appreciate it, right?
Yeah.
At best. But that quirkiness, that sort of like veer away from anything that was realistic. And a lot of it was dark and extreme, right? I mean,
Mm,
this is like G.I. Joe Extreme literally came out, right?
yeah.
Um, but there was this, everything had to be extreme, but it was all kind of like flashy and sort of, had more violence, but in this kind of like kid-friendly way, whereas like the 80s stuff had violence, but it was in this kind of like you were saying in the last episode, like ruffled the hem of you know, of the original.
Yeah.
There'd be silly fights, but then there'd be something where you'd be like, oh, that's some dark shit, right?
Mm,
There were deaths and stuff like that. 90s stuff just kind of, there's weird quirkiness, but there isn't a lot of kind of like adult animation. Um,
no.
you have HBO does Spawn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a rare exception, but really it's all this kind of quirkiness and this just feels so 90s in the worst way.
Well, I've just got them up. I just had a quick look, and it reminded to remind me because you're right. I mean, we should say, like, from a certain perspective, you had things like the early 90s was that kind of hangover, I think, from the 80s where they were doing cool stuff. They had like the X-Men. I liked Gargoyles, which was sort of a kind of short-lived cartoon, but was had a darkness to it and some really cool stuff. Obviously, Batman the animated series, Spider-Man, and you get other oddities like Captain Planet. Um, you know. But then you had those sort of where they took certain ideas and ran with them. So like they're like, oh, Ninja Turtles was good. Let's try and what other animals can we turn into things? And we sort of mentioned this in the last one: street sharks, SWAT cats, um, those kinds of. But then you're right. You end up with, um, the weirdness, cat dog, Animaniacs, Ren and Stimpy, Johnny Bravo. It's kind of like the real monsters. These kind of cartoons where it was sort of like we're just going to be weird and kind of surrealist in certain aspects. I mean, Johnny Bravo is a really good example of kind of like to making fun of like the macho kind of male character, but is also like a good guy. Like, yeah, there's these oddities of things. Aeon Flux was a 90s cartoon. Actually, that's another sort of example. I think of that was it MTV. Yeah, it was MTV. So they kind of
Liquid Television originally.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a definite weirdness and sort of like other ones I remember they did a Phantom 2025, as in like the Phantom, the ghost that walks.
Yeah.
That was really weird. Like the animate was all like elongated and all kind of like bizarre. So yeah, this you're right. Like this feels Robocop Alpha Commandos feels so incredibly 90s, but like you say, in the worst possible way because it feels so generic. Like there's no touching of the hem. There's no sort of like skirting that hem of going like, even like Robocop 3 of going like, here's where we came from. Here's here's the source. There's no. It's in Detroit. That's about it. But even that in the second episode, half it's spent in Canada.
God.
So yeah, it's this is so oddly generic and has nothing to sort of laud it. I mean, let's say, I should say also, it's not the only like movie, cartoon of the era. Men in Black spawned a cartoon. Godzilla, the '96 Godzilla movie with Matthew Broderick spawned a cartoon. They were still doing this kind of thing, but at least they sort of went, "Oh, we're going to stick with the premise of the film and kind of have that harking back." Yeah, this one could just be even from the animation style. You could just call it like I don't know, Android Cop, and it's
Yeah.
completely it feels a bit like that, doesn't it? Like when you go abroad and they'll be like oh, here's the toy section. I've got Spooderman and
Yeah.
Batboy.
Yeah, it does. I can't get over how chipper RoboCop is.
Yeah.
I can't get over how any sense of tragedy of I mean, look, RoboCop 1 and 2 both have that satire, sort of over the top feel,
Yep.
but also are darkly realistic, even uber dark, right?
Yeah.
And that's a weird tone, right? I mean, like, it's really hard to replicate that for kids, right? And that's partly why RoboCop for kids has always failed. But I think the 88 one at least gets the sort of like look and feel right, even if it's trying to modulate that tone. There is no happy-go-lucky version of RoboCop.
No.
You just can't do it. And I don't know. I just can't get over like he doesn't smile, but his voice sounds like it's smiling.
Well, yeah. Well, it makes that kind of, as you said, that there are jokes continually, and one-liners and punchlines and stuff. So it's constantly. At one point, like he stops to the Detroit police are sent out to stop in the first episode. They're sent out to stop him being reawoken, and he stops them he sort of defeats them with his glue gun, and then calls into the police and sort of says, "Officers down," and then say, "What's wrong with them?" Is they're a little stuck up. That's not even a good joke, but fine, but that's kind of the level that this hits throughout, and it never gets any better. It's just crap.
Yeah. I, I don't know what possessed them to make a chipper, futuristic version of RoboCop that's just generic, like you said, sort of arachnid, arachnid man. Um, and then also combine him with this sort of like Charlie's Angels fighting Cobra,
Mhm.
like, sort of. I mean, it's very kind of like Mask. It's sort of oddly reminiscent of a lot of things, but
Mhm.
a generic version of those things. Like, there's nothing. There's nothing good here.
No, there's not. No.
So what is the racism that's even worse in that I missed?
So apart from when they sort of say, we are from the accent basically of the guy who plays this sort of ambassador from Afghanistan is kind of like the most stereotypical Middle Eastern kind of accent, incredibly strong. But he says this thing we were part of, um, you know,
Afghanistan and
Afghanistan. Basically, any country ending in stan, it says, but now we are free and doing this thing. Um, but throughout it, like they they basically just highlight that this is a country they want because of like they're going, oh, it's they basically just keep going on like this is we want this to be an ally because they are the peaceful ones in the Middle East. That it just keeps coming up, and you're like, can you say that? And then they kind of say it out loud. But at the end of all of this, like I think it just builds up this whole, but that speech of the sort of in that strong Middle Eastern accent, and you're like, he does that whole speech about being thing, and then someone scratches their ear, and he gets
yeah,
how dare you offend my sister, and storms off, and you're like, you. I get that was a running joke, and you were kind of I didn't think you'd build to it where you were going to have this thing of like those crazy Middle Easterns. They're offended by
yeah,
the silliest thing. Um, it just everything about it just felt like I was like, oh, this is bad choice after bad choice after bad choice. Like it's
yeah. Let's be clear. This is pre 9/11,
yeah,
right? This
yes,
is what America thought of the Middle East before 9/11.
yeah,
You can imagine this being seen around the world, as an ambassador for my country.
yeah,
Like, I'm so
yeah.
sorry, world.
No, it's a it's a bizarre thing, but there's things as you say, it's just a kind of weird tonal elements of it as well. Like as you said, it's chipper. There's a whole point where at one point Dark kidnaps Robocop, and oh god, okay. So they have him, and they're trying to sort of torture him to make him talk about and they're trying to reprogram him so he will kill the Nogmanistan ambassador, and they're not being successful. And but then what's it, Miner and new whatever his name is, the doctor, are trying to track him down, and they are using some kind of remote hacking to get into Robocop's programming, and he's basically just tapping away, and then it skips back to Robocop on this table, and before he's just been laying there, and you think, oh, he's been disabled. All of a sudden, he rolls over and starts doing press ups. Then he does a breakdance, and then he says, like, your humiliation of me will not make me speak or not make me talk. And then the doctor says, "Oh, I can fire off his flares. That'll show us where he is." So all of a sudden, like a shoulder flare, a flare literally comes out of his shoulder and goes out of a window, and they track him down to where he is. But like, yeah, you have Robocop doing a breakdance on a table because the doctor's programming to it. It's head scratching how like I'm watching and like, I don't know who thought this was funny. I don't know what this is supposed to be. Like, there's nothing here.
Yeah. That's the kind of
However,
thing that, like, in a writer's room, you'd be like, okay, that's one idea.
yeah, yeah. Um, the one thing I thought was interesting in the very first prospect is they retired RoboCop and they put him into cryogenic freezing to um, sustain and retain his organic elements.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, yeah, what would happen? Like, would they let it die? Would they let it sort of, like, is that sort of part of it? So I was kind of interested in that, and then but it goes nowhere, and it means nothing.
Yeah.
Um, so
Well, one of the things that I should mention is that I have this kind of fascinating with, like, if this story continues, right?
yeah,
Where it's like, okay, you have the Fantastic Four. all you need to do is go into outer space and you turn into a monster, right? Like that's the way outer space works.
Yeah,
Um, that's clearly there in the first Fantastic Four. Um, comic anyway. So they have miniaturization technology, right? Well, okay, this is now on the cutting edge. This is a few years in advance. Where does this go? You have mutants, right? This is going to go violent and they're going to destroy a continent pretty soon, right? You
yeah,
have to roll these stories forward. Where does the Robocop story go?
yeah.
I'm boggled by the idea that this is in the future. Apparently, nobody else has done further advances with robotics or cybernetics. Like at least like RoboCop 2 is like, well, this is going to continue. Like the ED-209 is being deployed. Like you can't go. You can kind of only tell that story a little bit before you start getting technological advances, right?
Yes.
Clearly, they have the technology to build RoboCop, but what are the technologies that requires? Why isn't there another one? What
Yeah.
is this world going to look like in 5 years? Why does the world look like this and he's still on ice and nobody's built, additional things? What is the vision of the future that we're getting here? That
Laziness.
there are terrorists, and,
Well, yeah, there's a an international terrorist organization, but nobody seems to do much about other than this. Um, yeah, other than the Alpha Commandos. But we should. I just want to point out about the Alpha Commandos as well. Actually, again, just to sort of, we'll come back to the point is, um, the thing in this three-part episode, the three-parter is you were only introduced to a sort of a silhouette of the leader of Dark. He's in a cloak. He has red glowing eyes, and he has like a red and yellow mechanical arm. So I don't know what It's as if like there's going to be some reveal later on. But the other point is the leader of the Alpha Commandos has a static head. Like his head's just static.
mm-hmm.
You don't ever so. And at the end of the end of the third episode, Miner agrees to stay on working as a Detroit police cop to partner with Robocop, but working for Alpha Commandos. But like she will stay in Detroit, sort of thing. And you have the leader of Alpha Commando say, well, she agreed to do it, talking to somebody else, and I don't know whose voice it is, but he says, "No, I owe you $1." And I thought, well, maybe that's a joke for I'd buy that for $1. But and that's the cliffhanger. That's the end. You're like, so you want to go like, who's that talking, or like, what are they talking about? But the thing is, I know so little about either of these organizations at this point. I'm sort of like, all right, well, I don't really care. They've won. That's all this is.
Why are you working for an international like
Yeah,
spy agency that you don't know where it's based or who it is?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's so silly. But yeah,
From the Wikipedia page, the show also suffers from major continuity errors. During the first episodes, RoboCop's son is shown in flashback memories and appears to be around 10. However, he later appears to be exactly of the same age and even wearing the same clothing. The names of RoboCop's wife and son were changed to Susan and Richie. However, this is explained in episode 10. After Murphy became RoboCop, his family was forced to change their identity to keep RoboCop's enemies from locating them. Okay. So you see the kind of like just half-assed, approach to doing this. At least vis-a-vis RoboCop and content. If you want to do the show, it's fine. It's not a good show anyway, but it's, as you say, it's cyborg cop or something, right?
Cyborg Patrolman. This is Cyborg Patrolman. That's what this is. That's all it is. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I cannot stand this animation style, this broad-shouldered kind of Batman adventures sort of, look of RoboCop. I don't mind for Miner. Miner looks kind of cool, I can deal with this animation style. It's just seeing a sort of 90s, Bruce Timm RoboCop is just painful to me. Bruce Timm would have designed it better, frankly. But this kind of like insanely broad shoulders, kind of, chunky sort of Transformers animated sort of style. Yeah, it's just
it doesn't
really
work.
bad.
It just doesn't work for this character, for this setup. It just feels wrong throughout. Yeah, no, I wanted to watch all three episodes because I wanted to see, I thought at the end of it, I was like, oh well, I've seen like a short animated movie, I suppose, because they've all gone together. Like, should I watch just a random episode from the rest of the series? Couldn't bring myself to do it. I couldn't even press the button. I was like, no, I've done enough. I've given enough of myself to this show. Now I'm not doing any more.
Even the RoboCop live action show and the RoboCop 88 cartoon show.
But yeah,
I watched random episodes thinking, when am I going to go back to this? I'll be able to talk more completely
yeah,
about them. With this, by the end of the first episode, I was just like, this cannot be done fast enough. I technically agreed just to do the pilot episode. I'm not even watching the rest of the three-parter. I cannot stand this.
it's not good. Don't go back to it. Don't ever go back to it. I mean, we joked. I've gone along and joked and said like we joked about the TV show. And I was like, oh, there's we haven't even reached the low point of RoboCop. No, we have now. I
Yes.
don't care. We've got the Prime directives and the RoboCop reboot to go. Both of those are going to be better than this.
Oh, for sure. And I've seen all of that.
Yeah,
And Prime Directives is a mixed bag, but it's you see what they're going for, and what
yeah,
they're going for makes sense and is aligned with RoboCop. Um, the remake is what it is. We both seen it.
yeah,
It's sort of fine for what it is. Um, you know, but this is the mind-boggling, just head-scratching depth of the franchise. This is like if you made a Terminator cartoon show and you made, the Terminator,
yeah.
with a stylized version of that body so it doesn't really look right, cracking jokes.
Yes, yeah,
You know, let's do an alien cartoon show
oh,
where another female character, not Ripley, is buddies with an alien, and the alien suddenly has speech and is rendered in a totally non-threatening way and likes to crack jokes.
yeah. Sorry, you just reminded me of something. Actually, there's in the second episode. There's a moment where they are in a factory and they have some full robots, some sentry robots chasing Robocop and Miner and Cap and Doctor what's his bollocks
Newmeyer.
Newmeyer, yeah. And he runs with a panel that says switch on all the machines, it'll confuse their senses. And these two robots turned around and I was like, oh fuck, they've just done an homage to the end of the Terminator. And then, so I was like, oh, that's cool. I was like, okay, there's a completely different franchise. You could have done with touching base with your own franchise, to be fair. But I thought that was interesting. But then they jump onto a conveyor belt going through this factory. And this thing is laying down like bits of kit, and like these things are coming in and doing welding and spark welding and all this other stuff. Whilst these two of the robots are coming at them, and I'm like, holy shit! Before it even happened, RoboCop Alpha Commandos beat Attack of the Clones to their own finale.
I was thinking that, yeah, as
Yeah,
you were describing it. I
it's
mean, one of
exactly
the
like
worst
that.
scenes in the history of science fiction
Yeah.
is the Attack of the Clones finale. Um, yeah, conveyor belt scenes never work.
No.
Keep your characters off conveyor belts at all
Yeah.
costs.
Yes. So I thought it was just funny, but that's the only time I was like, oh, that's interesting. But like in an interesting kind of like, oh, not a I want to
Cringe.
watch more. Yeah, kind of like, oh, you're referencing other science fiction unknowingly, but not your own, not your own franchise in the slightest.
I mean, there are a million things to do with, again, with RoboCop in the future, right? ED-209s everywhere. The next upgrade to ED-209, like, it's a totally fascist world. These have been used to take over foreign countries. There are a million ways to go imagining the future of RoboCop. Nobody watched RoboCop and said, where is this world going to be in 20 years? They just made this all up and shoved
Yeah.
RoboCop in it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's yeah, and none of their choices are interesting.
No.
None of them are good. None of them lead to entertaining or novel scenarios.
No, it's all rubbish. I mean, this is devoid of any sort of real creativity. So yeah, complete. This is a massive not recommend for this version. I mean, you know what I said? We said that for the '88 version. It's like it's readily available on YouTube.
Mhm.
Go watch those. Check out those episodes. I will say this is readily available on YouTube as well, but like I can't, in good
Don't bother.
conscience, say go watch it.
Watch the theme song if you want to laugh. Just
RoboCop, RoboCop. That is, yeah, yeah, amazing. Um,
yeah. So
it says
somebody
it
made
all.
this.
Yeah,
Carrie Bates worked on this. Most of the same people from the '88 show worked on this. You know, how the hell were people involved? How the hell was money exchanged to make this?
they just moved on mentally. They were just like, fucking, just shit this out and move on. Like we got paid.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well, you can't, you know, ding people for wanting a paycheck,
Oh no,
especially
no.
writers. But yeah, I mean, it's mind-boggling. You know,
Yeah. I don't want to talk about it anymore. To be honest,
no.
like I feel like we've done enough. We've explored.
Somebody thought this was going to be the next big thing, right?
Yeah, I mean they commissioned 41 episodes. That's a this was on daily as well, so over a summer period. Um, so yeah, knackers to it. This is a bad show. This was a bad idea. It's badly animated. It's badly thought out. It's not RoboCop. This is the low point for this franchise. This is really is a low point for this franchise. This kind of because I don't know when they are. When's where are they? Prime Directives. Okay, they come out a year
2 years
later.
later. Yeah.
Yeah, 2001. So that kind of ends it a little bit for almost a decade. But
Yeah. And
um,
I think unfortunately, so like when they did Prime Directives, they still had the license from the live action show.
yeah.
And they sort of knew this was the end, right?
Hmm.
Um and they were trying to kind of bring RoboCop back to his roots, and nobody cared because at that point RoboCop was already a joke.
Yeah.
Um, I think that Terminator had done, when does Terminator 3 come out?
2004.
Okay. So like Terminator is kind of like in stasis. It's only had 2 movies and they're basically good. RoboCop has had 2 amazing movies and a bunch of shit to
Yeah.
varying degrees.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like the last straw of like this is done as a franchise. Alpha Commando is like RoboCop will never recover. We've run that into the ground. This is the end. And Prime Directives is sort of like nobody's going to watch this, but this is
Hmm.
the back to basics kind of coda. Nobody's ever going to make RoboCop again.
Yeah. No, it's weird. Isn't it? It feels kind of like and obviously it does, and then it. I'm kind of curious about. I'm looking forward to watching the Prime Directives because I've never seen those.
Hmm.
Not all of them. I think I've seen like whatever the first one's called. It's like Meltdown or whatever. I can't remember what it's called now. But
They do get kind of tedious, but
yeah,
you
I
know.
saw the first. I've seen the first one, but now seeing them in order, all
Mhm.
this stuff, right? So we've gone through the films. Yes, we went back and looked at the cartoon, but now watching this in '98, the TV series, and there is this kind of just this sort of like desire, and you can see it. I bet there's an executive, like there's someone like an OCP kind of executive who's just going like, how do we suck as much money out of this as possible? Who's the target audience for this? Like, well, for kids, we can sell. It's cool. Like Robocop's cool, so we want to be able to sell figures, action figures, and we want to sell comics, and we want to sell toys, and we want to sell cartoons, and da da da. Like they saw that film, which was like anti-corporate and everything,
Mhm.
and just went, we want to commodify it as much as possible and turn it into something. And they can see how each time they do it, like part of his soul starts to die, where they just sort of like it just keeps moving further and further away from that original premise, that original sort of like scathing sort of commentary on it all in the first place.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's true. I mean, it's sort of like, how can we make Squid Game toys?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, it's it's a problem. Everything gets corrupted by that system. But also it illustrates, earlier on, sort of the total mismanagement of a franchise,
Hmm.
where, this is true of all of the franchises now, but how you have sort of RoboCop 1, RoboCop 2, you take this, bad detour in 3, it's entirely based on what you're saying, right? Marketing to kids will get
Hmm.
a more PG-13 rating, and, get more butts in the seats. Um, a cartoon show, another cartoon show. I mean, you know, this clearly none of those match up, right?
Nope.
Even RoboCop 3 doesn't match up with 1, 2.
No.
But certainly these cartoon shows and the live action doesn't. Um, there's no attention paid to building a universe, building a continuity, trying to manage a franchise and a character successfully. It's just kind of cash grabs, or at best, sort of like, well, what is you do? And there were smart people working on this. There were talented
Yeah, yeah.
people, but they're doing their best under ridiculous constraints. Um, and I mean, I could see by the time Alpha Commando comes out, like people sitting in a room saying, like, look, the RoboCop formula is done. How can we renovate reinvigorate
Hmm.
this franchise? Um, let's take it into the future. Why does RoboCop have to be so dark? Let's have fun with this. Kids like the fun shows, and it doesn't work. And kudos to them for trying. I mean, you know, shit on them for failing so dramatically and
Yeah.
having such bad ideas. But, I understand that you'd want to do that. But at the end of this, it's always strikes me how much money and talent is given. And you think about, what would I keep out of any of that? I would keep
Mm.
the first two movies. What is the point? Why have you spent, do you have so many hours of television and animated shows and movies and all of this, and it doesn't even tell a coherent story. It doesn't even, fit together. Every new project ignores the last one. Stop doing this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we will see, as time goes on, all the franchises copy what RoboCop did
Yeah.
in ruining its franchise.
Yes. Well, we've seen, like, they've seen the reboots. We've seen the sort of like, okay, as you said before, like, right, we're going to ignore those films and we're going to go. We're going to sort of take off from that point, and then we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Like, it's there. Like, all those things are. We said like Terminator's done it. Halloween did it. Like, all those things have done it. Reboots and that sort of thing. Like, they just. It's funny, as you said about this. One of the things that sort of popped into my head was, I don't know if you've seen it, but the Terrifier films. There's
Yeah.
Terrifier 1, 2, and 3. Damien Leone, and made some sort of like grotty, dirty little sort of like horror film called All Hallows Eve, which featured a clown, and then it did Terrifier in like 2016, I think, which was really low budget, but it's really gory, and it sort of caught the attention of it caught the attention of sort of the horror community, and then he did Terrifier 2, which really kind of raised the sort of the bar, a little bit more budget and stuff. Um, and then when that took off, and he said, we're gonna do 3, he got approached by like numerous studios that were like, look, if you were we'll take this, we will distribute this, and we'll give you budget of up to whatever, but what you've got to do is tone down the violence. Art the Clown's got to talk. We've got to have this, we've got to have that. You can't kill these people, you can't do this, that kind of thing. And he said, no, that's
Right.
not. And he stuck to his guns, and Terrifier 3 was made for $2 million. I know you and I always talk about sort of budget size. It's a 2 hour sort of, it's quite a long, it's a 2 hour horror film. It's literally about a clown that kills people, incredibly gory. I love them, but like, made 90 million. But one of the things that franchise is doing is he's going like, there's a fourth one, and that's it. I have a vision, I have a story I want to tell. Here's how I'm sticking to it. Da da da. And as you sort of say, because he's sticking to his guns, I'm kind of like impressed that he hasn't gone. Paramount came a knocking, or like Warner Brothers came a knocking, or whoever. He's gone like, I don't need 15, 20, 60 million. I don't need that much money. I just need this, and I'm happy to do it off my own back. And it's made gangbusters.
Yeah.
And it has merchandising. Like, Art the Clown has become a bit of an icon, and there are T-shirts and things, and Ellie, my Ellie is 11. She hasn't seen the Terrifier films, but she knows who Art the Clown is. Because he got memed throughout when after. So you're right. Like, you can still do all that stuff if you do it well, and you know who your audience is, and you go, as we've always said, keep your budgets to a really reasonable rate, but stick to what you want to do. And you're right.
Have a vision.
Have a vision.
And stop with these branching continuities.
Yeah.
Stop with,
Don't need to happen.
I mean, and RoboCop, it's like, what content, 1, 2, and 3 are sort of in continuity with themselves.
Yeah.
What continuity does the cartoon show take place in? The 88. In its own continuity, right?
Yeah.
There's a cartoon version of RoboCop 1 that stops halfway through, and that's what it's in with, and you kind of have to imagine that. Okay, that's great. What continuity does the live action show take place in? Ambiguous, right? Not really in continuity with 1, kind of pseudo, but okay, Alpha Commando, like kind of with 1, but no, not really, Okay, why do you have all of these like, there's so much to do with this franchise. Are you really that out of ideas this early on? And I don't know if some of it is just like, I don't want to carry this into the future. I don't want to think about where this would go, because the original premise is just a robot cop, right? If there are tons of ED-209. I mean, like, look, do just the ED-209, Amazon War show, right? That's a lot better than RoboCop in the future waking up, and this nonsense. There are tons of things you could do.
I kind of want that. I kind of want that now. I want that, the animated Amazon War show, where it's just sort of like, create your own sort of like commandos doing their thing and raiding.
Can you imagine like the soldiers like unpacking the ED-209s in the Amazon, going like, none of this is working. They've left out key components, and the ED-209 is not rated for the rainforest. Like, you have to cover it up because every time it rains, they stop working.
Yeah.
That would be brilliant. I'd love just these, embittered soldiers, fighting in this stupid corporate war. Like, do it as a miniseries, bring it in for a low amount, know? I don't know. There are ideas here. But why? But that would be in keeping with the original continuity, right?
Yeah.
What's going on around the world? Where does RoboCop, what does that world look like 20 years hence? I don't know. It just seems a failure of imagination.
One of the things I was always sort of curious about was, they were all, because you do kind of, like, you're right, because the first film we highlighted, we praised, was the fact that, exactly as you're saying, Dick Jones says that they have a contract with the military for 10 years and for 15 years for parts, for ED-209 to be deployed all over the world, blah, blah. And then they bring on like Robocop and stuff. But one of the things they never sort of touch on is like, oh, we've had advances from, other states or other cities or other countries. Like, this, North Korea is tapping on our door to have the rights, to sort of, China is tried to sort of take, how does, I mean, obviously it was a different period, it was Japan at the time, but like, right. China's come and knocking for the rights to how the software or this one component of RoboCop, or like, the chips that come from a certain part, and I don't know, it just feels like there's so much you could do. Like, yes, there's going to be a version from a different country that sort of, there's so much, like you say, just roll it forward like this. There'd be international competition. There would be,
the Chinese RoboCop, right?
Yeah.
With stolen technology from OCP and lawsuits. I mean,
but you'd find that like the Chinese or the North Korean, like they weren't killed in the line of duty. They were executed in order to like fulfill it. Like, like you want to be that, you want to go dark, right? You find out that North Korea killed hundreds of people experimenting with how to make the RoboCop system work.
Yeah, there's going to be a RoboCop arms race, at
Yeah,
least an ED-209 arms race. I mean, think about like the fact that you RoboCop has the spike and can process data.
yeah,
That data is transmitted to his brain somehow, or at
yes,
least to a computer that his brain can access somehow.
yeah,
That interface is the essence of the entire cyberpunk genre.
yes, yes. The interface
So
between brain and technology. Yes.
So let's fast forward, right? Like they've clearly got that technology. If you want to do a future of RoboCop, you know, that is going to be a far more lucrative technology than turning cops into machines,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like OCP is going to rule the future because it's got the technology that allows human brains to interface with, digital components.
and how's that
Um,
commodified into like entertainment, into the
exactly.
corporate world, into you don't have to have Google glasses. You've now got, you know, but they've got like a digital. Your finger is now a USB port or whatever. Like, yeah,
Yeah, we've got the ability to have you interact with uh the internet or whatever. I mean, you want to do a cyberpunk 10 years since RoboCop, the germ of that is right there.
mm,
What is the future of OCP? Again, there's a million ideas to go here, but all of them should be consistent with the universe you've established. I
yeah,
don't need a cyberpunk RoboCop that feels like Blade Runner and is set in its own universe.
yeah,
And this Alpha Commando isn't even that. It's like a third generation mask,
yeah.
ripoff, that looks like Batman Adventures set in its own universe. Why are you doing this?
No, it's so far removed from the source material that it kind of it's one of those where when you have like with Batman, you can do these kinds of things because you've had like 80 years worth of like, you know, or 70 years worth of like iterations. So as a cartoon, you can go, oh, we did the Batman, animated adventures, and then we did the Batman, and then we did Batman the Brave and the Bold, and you go, yeah, they're not all in the same continuity, but in essence, they're still Batman. Do you know what I mean? Like you can go, oh,
Right.
you can do that because you can have that nostalgia thing of going, well, that taps into this kind of iteration of Batman and that sort of thing. But you're right, you don't really have enough of that with RoboCop to sort of go, well, what is the essence? That's all I always feel like with these things. Like you can
Mhm.
say that there is an essential connection between, say, like the Batman the animated series, the Batman, and Batman the Brave and the Bold. Right? Let's just use those as an example. There are still an essential elements that will run through those versions of Batman. There you go. They're drawn different, they're voiced differently, they're animated differently, everything, but they are still distinguishable as Batman.
Mhm.
All right, in their essence. And there are parts of like the RoboCop franchise where you go, I can go one, two, three. There is an essence of RoboCop. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a RoboCop shaped figure that I recognise. There's an essence there, and I think one
Mhm.
of the things that I recognise as being part of that is a meanness.
Mhm.
It's not there's a morality to Batman and also the stuff, but there's like a meanness to the RoboCop universe you've got to acknowledge and you've got to have. And so when it starts to move away from that and they kidify we said it in the TV show. When you watch that TV series, or at least the pilot and stuff, the times you and I praised it was when it was like, oh, it's doing something a little dark. Like it's
Right.
again, it's touching the hem of the original. It's good, like it was. Oh, we're going to do this with the villains. Like the fight at the end is kind of well choreographed, and the RoboCop's going to like shoot people or going to give someone a good kicking. Or there's elements of it that when it was doing those things, it was good. And then, but when it was cartoony and it started to move away, and it had like the ridiculous vision, the villains, Doctor Crazy Malado and Chip Chaikin, like falls flat. It doesn't work. And the same with the cartoons and stuff. When it's kid friendly, when it's done as that kids and family entertainment, the meanness is gone. You need that kind of that fleck of meanness is what it is. I think is the essence of RoboCop. You know, like you couldn't have like a mean Superman. You have to have a hopeful Superman. Like that's the point. Like he's supposed to be inspirational. With RoboCop, it's kind of like, as we've said, like he's trapped in a system because he's owned and has to be maintained by the villains. And in the others, they have to soften that and take it away. And I think that's the problem. Like, the more you move away from that, the more it's no longer RoboCop.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that I know what you're saying and I agree with you. I sort of wonder about this idea of the essence of a character.
Mm.
We talk about that, but there are people who would say the essence of Batman is a dark, realistic character. Yeah, but there's Batman 66 and it works for what it
Yeah.
is. Batman is a very versatile character.
Hmm.
Unlike a lot of other characters. I guess I would say like that versatility is built up over years of trying different things and seeing,
Yes.
how a silly Batman would work, for example. And RoboCop, maybe the best thing we can say about Alpha Commando is it's trying to see if RoboCop works in this sort of setting and falling on
Doesn't.
its face,
Yeah.
right? But I do think that I sort of cringe a little when people talk about like, well, the essence of Batman is this, or the essence of this character, because I think you can do a mean Superman. Um, but you have to know it's departing from the essence of Superman.
Mm.
And that usually means that you keep everything else the same, or you're very careful with how far you deviate because you're removing one element, right? So you do this very consciously. You don't just willy-nilly change everything, right?
Hmm.
He's no longer from Krypton. He actually, got his powers from a meteor, and also he's really mean.
Yeah.
And when you shift all of those elements at once, it deviates too far. So I think you can play with these things, but and I was thinking when you were talking about how like you could do Batman. Batman is very versatile. I could imagine Adam West showing up on Laugh-In and
Mm.
stroking his eyebrow and saying, you know, whatever catchphrase. And I thought, can I imagine RoboCop on Laugh-In? Yes, absolutely. But RoboCop shows up on Laugh-In, is, and says, like, I'll buy that for $1 or something, and shoots the host.
Yes.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
it has to, you could do a silly RoboCop, but it has to have that, like, violent, satirical, edge
Meanness.
to it.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I think and I think like imagining like the cyberpunk RoboCop series, those are not elements present in the original film. The
Mm-mm.
original film is not worried about society. It's not Blade Runner. It's it was influenced by Blade Runner, but it's not that cyberpunk social kind of thing. You could do that in a RoboCop, series that takes place in that universe, but you're aware that that is a change, and so you keep the other elements consistent, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, because you're asking the audience to go a step further and expand their concept of what RoboCop is as a franchise, and so you keep certain elements very traditional while asking them to take a big step out of their comfort zone.
Hmm.
Okay. All of these failed attempts are, not doing so in this kind of considered manner.
No, and I think that's you are right. Okay, it's like a mixing board, isn't it? Like an editing mixing board. Like you can, all right, if we're going to sort of remove this thing or reduce this thing, like we have to maybe sort of switch this one up a little bit, like compensate or but move things around. But yeah, but if you remove all of them
Yeah.
apart from the name, then it's no longer that thing. It's a copy. It's a replication. It's not the same thing. Um,
You could put pineapple on a pizza, but when you replace the bread with chicken patties, it's no longer a pizza.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, we've said this, but there are other characters like a similar character to Robocop would be Judge Dredd, and we've said this kind of thing,
Mhm.
like and Dredd's incredibly versatile. They've done, but like, but Dredd at the center of it is the sort of the straight man. Like the world can be incredibly dark and satirical, and you can have a story like America, or you can go that far, and and they did, and it's brilliant. Or you can have a story about um, a couple that have adopted a toad boy from the cursed earth that when they lick gives them hallucinogens.
Hmm.
and Dredd accidentally licks the toad. Like, this is literally a story. Like,
Hmm.
and he licks the toad and has a hallucinogenic response and starts talking to things. Like, you can do that, but at no point does like Dredd sort of like crack jokes and smile and sort of like, and do, he's not going to start like hugging people unless there's a, they could do justifications for it, but like, it's not Dredd. Do you know what I mean? But
Hmm.
you can put him in any of those situations, and good writers will be able to give you that versatility of sort of environment or story. But the character sort of is the one part, is that element that doesn't, because he is a stubborn, very sort of inflexible character to an
Well,
extent.
Dredd can be a fascist. Like in America,
Yeah, yeah.
he's an
A
unapologetic fascist.
fascist. Yes.
He could be sympathetic to democracy and basically a good guy at heart, as he is in a lot of stories, with fascist tendencies, right?
Yeah.
Sort of struggling himself, but trying to navigate them. Um, so, I mean, I think you can even change the character, but you can't make Dredd cracking jokes and, whipping out gadgets that weren't there a panel
Mm.
earlier. I mean, he can have weird gadgets, but you know, there's a limit.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. And I think that's it. The point is like, basically, Robocop Alpha Commando shows where the limit is, and it's here, and it's a bit of honestly, a wasteland of a cartoon.
yeah,
Um, Anyway,
agreed.
we should wrap up on that point. I think we sort of like we've given this over an hour of discussion for this shit heap of a cartoon.
Way more than it deserves.
Yes, but we're not done with RoboCop. This is a we're going all in. I think this is the a
A
definitive look.
marathon,
Yeah,
not a sprint. Yeah.
no, and in the next episode we will be looking at the Prime Directives. It's a 4 episode kind of mini movies. Each one's a film, like an hour and a half.
I was thinking, technically, there have been 4 RoboCop theatrical movies, right? Counting the remake.
Mhm.
Uh, Prime Directives is 4 movies. They are
Yeah.
technically 4 TV movies.
They have a continuity, don't they? I think they're
Yeah.
like episodic in the sort of like they build
Hmm.
on themselves.
Yeah.
I've
It's
only
really a
seen
mini series of, of,
yeah,
of 4 TV movies.
yeah. We'll take it as one, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see. But yes, but that's what we're going to next. The 2001 Prime Directives. Um, Interesting titles. I think the one's called Meltdown. One's called Crash and Burn. Not sure if they were just talking about the franchise or
Get ready
we'll
for your
see.
Pixies references.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, 4 episodes. We'll talk about those, and obviously we will then top it all out with the reboot and the remake in 2014. But anyway,
This is called the full RoboCop. It's like
yes,
the full Monty. We're doing the full RoboCop.
yes, yeah, we've covered it. I think we've touched on every bit and piece. I mean, I think maybe we haven't touched on some of the comics,
Right.
and maybe it's worth talking about things like RoboCop versus Terminator. And we'll do
There's some good RoboCop comics. Yeah.
yeah. So
Uh,
we'll have a think about that as well. But anyway, for now though, everyone, if you're listening along, really gratefully appreciate your support, and if you are watching along, sorry, we've gone through a bit of a lull. I'm sure it'll pick up. We'll see how it goes. But thank you very much for your support on both the main feed and on the Patreon. We greatly appreciate all the support we get. And yeah, Julian, thank you very much for this discussion. It's been fantastic.
Thank you, Scott.
But for now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and we shall see you on the next episode.